Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. Today's video is going out to Ryan, and we do have a bunch of ground to cover. So what you see on the screen is an example he typed into a thread at Plexaholics. So let me read his post. I'm splitting my libraries into 4K and 1080p. I have a 1080p only that'll allow access to family, and a library that has both 4K and 1080p. I have local artwork with Blu-ray and 4K artwork. Is there a way to make Plex prefer the 4K artwork for titles I have both on 1080p and 4K? So I assume the library that has both 4K and 1080p is only going to be for himself, and that he's going to share the 1080p library. And I've got to stop right there and say that's kind of backwards. But I do want to say that you can use your own artwork and have Plex scan it in all automatically as a local asset, but you have to set that up first, and that's as much work as adding your own custom artwork after Plex has already scanned things normally. So let's get back to the backwards part. Many of us have a separate 4K library, and we don't share that. And then regular content goes into a regular movie library. So you don't share the 4K, and maybe if you've got a buddy that has a gig fiber connection and you've got a gig fiber connection, you can selectively share that 4K library with him, but no one else, because you both have the bandwidth to get the media where it needs to go. Well, I've got to stop Ryan on his example. So a movie title comes from either TMDB or IMDb, and you can't modify the movie title. So the movie title basically has to be the file name and the folder name. And Ryan's example isn't using a folder name. So let's go to TMDB. And let's just pick something along here. Let's pick this, simple name. You can copy and paste it. Now I can't, because my word processor is going to pick up that formatting. So I can just make a stop there. So say I had this movie in both libraries. This is what I would do, especially if I had a Plex Pass. Let's get rid of all this. Okay, so you'd have the folder, and I would put in the TMDB source ID number. We'll just do TMDB-12345. Wrong movie, but we'll just use that. And actually, let's get that going down here. Whoops. None of my videos are scripted. I do think about them, and I do jot a few notes down. Well, if you have a Plex Pass, I then use the addition tag in the file name. All right, so let's make this look nicer. I can just copy that. All right, so we have the library folder, we have the movie name folder, and now we'll work on the file name. So this is the addition tag. And I'd simply call it 4K. Now you might use this for an unrated version when you had both versions, a director's cut, and you can even use it for a movie that has director's commentary in the same library. Plex doesn't support commentary tracks officially, but they work. So you could strip out the regular audio from a copy of a movie and just leave in the commentary and label it as director's commentary or simply commentary, and have both versions of the movie side by side, And the regular movie, you'd make sure you stripped out the commentary audio track. I use this for colorized movies when I have a copy of each. But why it works for a 4K, and to do this for every 4K in your library, if you have the same movie in your 4K library and your 1080p library, and you start it but don't finish it, Plex treats that as one movie, and it will show both versions in your continue watching. If your smaller 4K movies have this 4K edition tag, Plex won't do that. If you start the 4K version and don't finish it, that's the only one that will be in your continue watching. If you start the 1080p, that's the only one that will be in your continue watching. So actually, I didn't have to copy the earlier stuff. All right, so let's make this work for both libraries. So here's simple naming that, oh, I really screwed the pooch on this one. Here's simple naming for two different libraries for the same movie, and Plex won't display both under continue watching, and this will show up in Plex with this tag, and let's show that. Let's go into this test 4K library. So I've used the edition tag a few times in this little test library. Here's one that's marked 4K AV1. Not all client apps will play a video that's encoded, or it might play it, but it might not transcode it. Here's a commentary edition tag. Here's a 4K edition tag. Another 4K, and if I go into the plain test movie library, here's a remastered edition tag, and here's an 8K, a 4K, and a 1080p, and a 720p. Now I use this for different videos, and I don't always clean up what I'm showing from the video before, which is why we're seeing this. So you really want to have proper structure. And Ryan, that all starts from Plex's support articles. Your files need to be named properly. So here's everything in relation to movies, TV shows, and music. And music depends more on embedded metadata than the structure, unlike movies and TV shows. So you start with this, and it really tells you how to name things. And basically, you're just copying this from either TMDB or IMDb. And if you want a can't mismatch, you add the source ID from either TMDB or IMDb. And you include the TT number from IMDb. And then you repeat that in the file name. So this is just a basic, simple file name that can't miss. So then this talks about addition and tells you how to use multiple files for one movie. If you've got a movie split across two files, you can join them with this. Plex never mentions it as being the official separator, but you see a space dash space used a lot. It separates components inside the file name from each other. So without a Plex pass, you can have multiple versions of a movie with this versioning naming. One movie folder, multiple copies in it, both copies named the same except for this. So the space dash space separator, and then a 1080p, and then SD or 720p or 480p. And Plex will scan those as one movie. That you can split apart. So let me show that now. That's why these are here. This has the edition tag. These were manually split with the edition tag added. So let me get rid of that test movie library. And then let's add it back. And I'll show you how versioning works. So the only thing I change is I set my collection to 2. So if I have at least 2 movies that are part of a collection, that will pop in. And I also like to hide the collections from the library mode. So this will mean you'll only see it in the collection tab. All right, so we'll go to the library tab. So remember, I said I had 1 movie with the edition tag for Big Buck Bunny. And there's the edition tag. Plex scanned it in and added this little descriptor, just like it added remastered. Now if I look at this, you'll see I have 3 versions of this movie, and I'm using the versioning naming scheme. So they're all named the same. They're all Big Buck Bunny with the TMDB source ID. But this is where they differ. So I've got the space dash space, and I'm basically just using the media characteristics and the resolution as my versioning difference. The 8K, the 1080p, and the 720p. So you can split these apart manually, and I won't do that because that's why I just deleted the old version of the library. You can split those apart manually, but then they're all just going to look the same. So it's really better to have a Plex Pass and throw that edition tag into the file name right to start with. And I know I'm jumping around. So here's all 4 movies in the same movie folder. It's in this folder. And okay, I just double backed on myself and got lost. All right, where am I? Something doesn't look right. Let me pause the video until I figure out if it's my mistake or if something really doesn't look right. All right, that was a huge senior moment. I'm in the wrong spot. I'm not on my NAS. I'm browsing locally. And what confused me, if I didn't explain it, is I did not see the edition tag, but I was in the wrong spot. So if I'm on the NAS and I go into what I actually scanned, there's my edition tag in the 1 file name, which is where I was headed here to show you that's why it's scanned in. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about local assets and why you might not want them if you have an existing library. So where am I here? Someplace I have an example, and I believe it's this one. Okay, so this is an MP4, and I don't have MKV toolnix associated with it, only with MKV files. So let me manually drag this movie in. Okay, I know it's kind of disjointed, but let me skip back to Plex and we'll look at a setting here. Under the advanced library settings, this is checked by default. And what that'll do is if you have a local poster or a background and it's named properly or a subtitle, Plex will pick those up and use them. If you check prefer local metadata, Plex is going to make sure they use them no matter what, and it's going to use every available local access. So this can be dangerous in this situation. So this looks like a normal media file broken down into parts. There's the video, there's the audio, there's some tags. there could be subtitles. But what you have to watch out for if you don't rip your own media is the original source. They're proud. These people that rip movies and share them freely on the open seas, they're very proud. This is an embedded file name. For Plex to scan this, you'd want to change this to let's see, where am I on the keyboard? You can even use the addition tag. Well, can't have that capped. We'll keep the remastered in caps. That doesn't matter. You'd want to get rid of all that extra stuff. Now this is fine. Plex will scan that in if I fix this. So any media like this, you'd have to adjust, and then I'd have to start multiplexing. It happens pretty fast, depending on the file size. Of 79 gigabyte 4K file is going to take longer to fix up. So this is non-destructive. It won't remove the original file or modify it in any way. And it leaves me with two versions. And now Plex will scan this one in because it's going to look for the embedded file name before it uses the actual file name. So if I didn't force it to use local media assets, either one would work. But if I'm forcing it to use every available local media assets, you better not have a release group's name inside the file name. It's going to screw your library up. So local assets do work, and if you simply throw them in to the folder, Plex will pick them first. So let me go into this, which is prepped, just 2 movies. So with my same naming convention, and then there's a poster and a background image that I've modified. 1080p, 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 and 1080p. So we know what that looks like in a regular Plex library because I have both movies in the other library. Plex is simply going to pull the artwork that it does, and then you have choices of what you want to pick if you don't like it. Some movies will have the 4K or UHD Blu-ray moniker on them, and you can just pick it. And if not, you've got to find your own. And even if you want to use a local poster, you've got to find your own. And once you find your own, you can stick it in the folder and let Plex scan it if it's named properly, or you can simply add it manually by choosing the image and pointing to it. All right, so let's create a test library that uses those local assets. Well, let's say that uses the available local assets, but we're not forcing it to use all the local assets. Where am I? Scrolling around for no reasons. So I will not check this second option. Everything's default here. I do like to set minimum collection size to 2 and hide the collections from the library tab. So we'll scan that, and you'll see Plex is using the artwork that I had prepared already. And if I edit it, now all the regular artwork is still pulled in. I've simply supplied my own. There's mine, and there's what Plex pulls in. So to be honest with you, here's my 4K library. I add that 4K tag to the file name, where am I, on everything in my small 4K library. There's about 120 titles. And all I care about is continue watching, not showing both the 1080p version and the 4K version if I happen to stop a 4K movie partway through. And that addition tag keeps things clean. So, Ryan, I know no one likes to be criticized over how they've set their media up, but all I can tell you is I did the same thing. My file naming was atrocious. I installed Plex and just started throwing media at it without understanding it. And I had to walk it all back, and I like how my server looks. So, we know what you typed. This is how I would adjust it. You can have separate libraries. Most of us do. Only share the 4K library with someone who has great internet access, as long as you do. You need the outgoing bandwidth to serve the media up. And then share your regular movie library with everybody, and you can call those whatever you want. Let me slide down here. So that's what I've done here. Maybe name the 4K movie library something like this, or something like that. Now, because I'm a Linux guy, we'll go back to my structure, and that'll be the end of the conversation. So Matt Peterson had the advice a few years back when I was redoing things, maybe 3 years back, and not just for me, for everybody. His advice was to keep things lowercase and no spaces until you got to the point where you could return to that. So let's go right back. These are shared media folders on my Synology NAS. Here's my shared media folder for all this test media. Here it is for my regular media. I've renamed things simply. These are library sort folders, simply named movie. When I go into it, these are my individual movie libraries. So if I go in here, I've got movie, and then the movie folder. It might look confusing, but it works for me. So once you get past the library folder, then you return to uppercase and spaces, but all to Plex's convention. And FileBot helps me rename these with these descriptive file names. Now my current file name expression is putting this extra information into brackets, and I do that because Plex has made an official change in their TV show library scanner where any episode that has information in brackets, what's in the brackets is ignored. I don't know if it is in a movie library, so I used to name just for the versioning because I know versioning info is ignored by default. Plex doesn't say that, but you infer that from the versioning article. So now I just do the versioning in brackets, just in case that becomes a rule in a Plex library too. So I really like the nested folder structure, and I just name to really bring that home. Here's the movie library sort folder, other libraries, photo libraries. It's not likely you're going to have multiple music libraries, which is why I've purposely named that simple, and TV show libraries. Maybe you have a lot of anime and you have a separate collection. If it's in a separate library and you've only got 3 out of 15 friends that like anime, well, you can just share it with them. Or if you share it with everybody, they can unpin the anime library. Maybe you share everything with everyone, and for your friends that have little kids, they'll pin this library near the top, and your friends that are old people like me, they'll unpin it because they don't want to see that content. So separating unlike content works for me. With movie libraries, now I got a lot going on here. I can basically get rid of this stuff and this stuff because this is just here for your video. But a main movie library of kids, a DVR because you might not want to mix in commercial content. You might have a stand-up library, a concerts library. There's every concert that's been released on a Blu-ray or a DVD or that's been on a TV channel is listed in both databases as a movie. Stand-up comedy specials, you might want a separate library for those. There's lots of reasons to have sorted content. But I would not sort anything besides a 4K library. I would not have a 480p library, a 720p, and a 1080. Just keep all that in the main movie library. So Ryan, I've got FileBot videos to help you rename things, but you really should improve your folder structure. And if you do want to use local assets, it's really easy. Get the poster you want, no matter how the movie's named, simply or complex like I do. Throw a poster and a JPEG image in. But what doesn't work, and I'm not going to show that, what doesn't work, and I've tested it, is trying to have multiple versions of a movie in the same folder with their own local artwork. Plex just says to name it poster and background. But if I have two movies, I can't have two separate versions, both named poster and both named background. So both movies might pick up the same image and you don't really want that. So I would just encourage you to load the posters separately and just keep a folder. Maybe in your main library folder, keep a folder called artwork, and inside that maybe keep a folder called posters and backgrounds, or just keep everything in one folder named for the movie. If it's Big Buck Bunny, like I've shown the example of, Big Buck Bunny dot poster dot JPEG, Big Buck Bunny dot background dot JPEG. Once you scan them into Plex, Plex is going to have them, and if you ever have to rebuild your server from scratch, you've still got those posters associated with your media. And we're only talking about a 4K library anyway, and if you're not sharing that with any friends or family, chances are it's going to be a smaller library requiring less work. So I had no idea how to prep this video. I know it's going to feel disjointed, but I tried to cover the highlights for you, and it really has to start with Plex's support articles. And for movies, versioning and edition naming, and there's one for local media assets. I don't know if we even got here, but it's really easy. Posters, background.jpg. So thanks for hanging in. I know this is long and disjointed, but it is what it is. So thanks for watching.